On tonight's summary of the Israel-Hamas War, Day 190, Iran launches its first ever direct attack against Israel. Over 300 missiles and drones are fired at the country in retaliation for Israel's attack on Iran's Damascus consulate on April 1st. The Israeli Air Force, along with the air forces of the United States, the United Kingdom, and Jordan, intercept nearly all aerial attacks. Most of the interceptions were done before the objects reached Israeli airspace. As Israel promises major retaliations against Iran, the United States voices concern that Israel's reaction will be hasty, without a strategy, and unthought out. Meanwhile, on the local scene, Hamas has officially rejected the hostage proposal, stating that it is adhering to its original demands. With that, the negotiations have officially broken down. Hello everyone. I am Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Israel Institute fellow at the University of California, Irvine, here bringing you the summary of the last 24 hours of the Israel-Hamas War. It is currently the evening of April 13, 2024 in the United States, the morning of April 14, 2024 in the Middle East. Starting with the biggest news from the last 24 hours, Iran's attack on Israel. Iran launched a barrage of over 300 drones and missiles towards Israel in its first ever attack against the country. Termed by Iran Operation True Promise, the attack was launched from Iran itself, meaning that it took between 5 to 8 hours between the launching of the different air targets and their reaching their targets. The exact figures thus far include 185 drones that were launched, 36 cruise missiles, and 110 ballistic missiles, the vast majority of them launched from Iran itself, with a small amount of both drones and missiles launched by militias in Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. Hours prior to the attack, intelligence agencies both in Israel and the United States began warning that the attack was imminent, and the IDF cancelled all educational functions in Israel for the next 2 days and closed Israeli airspace. More importantly, Jordan also announced the closure of its airspace, announcing that it will intercept any aerial target that penetrates its airspace, thus cutting off a large amount of the direct line between Iran and Israel. Targets within Israel included the entirety of the country from the north to the south, including substantial barrages that were aimed towards Jerusalem, Beersheba, as well as the northern parts of Israel. The vast majority of missiles and drones were intercepted. Over 100 of these interceptions was done by Israeli Air Force, and the rest were done by the United States, United Kingdom, and Jordan. Most interceptions occurred outside of Israeli airspace over the regions of Syria and Iraq, and in some cases over the airspace of Jordan as well. However, within Israel, missiles intercepted included those interceptions that occurred above the Israeli Knesset, as well as above Temple Mount or Haram al-Sharif, where the Al-Aqsa Mosque is. In addition, there were some pictures that were shown of interceptions that occurred seemingly outside of the Earth's atmosphere, intercepting ballistic missiles, as shown in the picture here. One missile, or possibly a missile fragment, caused serious injuries to a 10-year-old child in the Bedouin region of Israel's Negev, and another caused minor damage to an IDF base in southern Israel as well. Beyond these, however, there was no damage reported. Several people did end up in the hospital as a result of injuries that resulted from them trying to find shelter. However, most of the missiles did not actually manage to hit their targets within Israel. As of now, there are no more missiles or drones that appear to be in the air on their way to Israel, and the initial incident right now appears to be over. There were a slew of political responses, as is expected throughout the day, to this attack. The attack was widely condemned by forces around the world, including the United States, Germany, Canada, France, the United Kingdom, Argentina, and the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, among other countries. Israel's ambassador to the United Nations demanded a special convening of the UN Security Council to discuss this matter. This is reportedly going to occur either on Sunday or Monday. In addition to this, Iran's UN ambassador issued a statement between the time that the aerial attack began and when the drones and missiles reached Israel. The statement opens by describing the attack as Iran, I quote, exercising its inherent right to self-defense as outlined in Article 51 of the Charter of the United Nations. It then adds that Iran is a responsible member of the UN and seeks to respect international law and does not seek further escalations in the region beyond carrying out its retaliation as self-defense to Israel's attack against its consulate on April 1st. Most importantly, while the message warns Israel against further actions and escalations and adds in capital letters that the matter is between Israel and Iran and the United States should stay out of it, the message also adds that as far as the Iranian regime is concerned, the matter can now be deemed concluded, i.e. as far as Iran is stating, there are going to be no further retaliations to the attack on April 1st and the matter is now concluded. In Israel, different political leaders ranging from Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, Minister Gantz, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant have all reiterated that, obviously as far as Israel is concerned, the matter is not concluded, and Israel is going to retaliate harshly against this attack. U.S. officials have spoken to their Israeli counterparts throughout the day, including conversations between President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu, Defense Secretary Austin and Defense Minister Gallant, and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, and Israel's head of National Security Council Tzachi Hanegbi. While the U.S. repeated in lots of statements in these conversations the ironclad commitment of the United States to Israel's defense, and President Biden also later put out a message praising Israel's defense and stating that the U.S. is always going to stand by its side, there are also words of warning that were attached both in the conversations and in different press releases. Defense Secretary Austin reportedly demanded that Israel inform the United States before carrying out any retaliation or attacks against Iran. NBC also reported that there are grave concerns within the Biden administration. Among others, it was reported that there is great fear within the Biden administration that Israel will retaliate hastily against Iran without developing a strategy, linking this to the view within the administration about the lack of strategy that Israel has in the Gaza Strip, stating that it is acting first and then trying to develop a strategy based on the outcome. Sources within the administration are quoted in NBC as stating that Biden is concerned that Netanyahu is going to try to drag the United States deeper into the conflict, while expressing that Israel is likely not looking for a larger escalation, but also will not necessarily think through its actions before carrying them out. The sources link this fear also to the initial attack that was carried out against the Iranian consulate on April 1st, and state explicitly that the fact that it was done in the midst of the hostage negotiations while Israel was waiting for Hamas's response to the negotiations is something that is inexplicable as far as the administration is concerned. They state that the fact that it has spiraled to the current situation is something that could have been foreseen, but it does not appear that Israel foresaw that, at least as far as the Biden administration is concerned. In addition to all this, Lebanon, Jordan, and Israel have all closed their airspace until further notice. Jordan was warned by Iran that shooting down air targets that go into Jordanian airspace will make Jordan the next target for Iran. However, Jordan reportedly was very active in intercepting all aerial targets crossing into the kingdom's airspace both from Iran and Syria. In addition to all this, Canada has issued a travel warning to its citizens in Israel, calling them to leave the country immediately. However, I will say that right now Israel's airspace is closed, so there is no ability to leave the country. With that, right now the situation is that the initial attack of Iran and its various different militias has ended. Right now, according to different reports, there are no more targets, aerial targets, on their way to Israel. However, right now the world is bracing for possibly Israel's retaliation to Iran, which could spiral the situation much further. I will say, if you're interested in more analysis regarding how Israel's retaliation may end up igniting the region with regards to different militias and how this will influence Hezbollah and other facets, please look at my channel. I gave a long interview today in which I discussed all the various scenarios about this. You could see this in the next video on this playlist. I will also put a link to that in the comments. In addition to all this, some highlights, and this is going to be more of an abbreviated summary of the other facets of the war from the last 24 hours. There were a lot of developments that occurred, however, these were all overshadowed by what happened with Iran. The biggest among these relates to the hostage situation. Hamas today officially put out an announcement that it is rejecting the latest hostage compromise that was proposed after the Cairo summit. In a statement that was put out today, the movement stated, and I quote, "We affirm our adherence to our demands and the demands of our people to a complete ceasefire, the occupation's withdrawal from the Gaza Strip, restoring internally displaced people, and increasing the entrance of humanitarian aid. We affirm our willingness to conclude a real and serious prisoner exchange between the sides if these demands are met." So with that, Hamas is confirming, they reported in Al-Ahbar yesterday, that it is officially rejecting the compromise and saying it is not budging from its initial position. Following Hamas's announcement, the Israeli Prime Minister's office responded to increasing protests in Israel that are calling upon the government to reach a hostage deal, stating, and I quote, Contrary to what is being published, the only obstacle to achieving the hostages' release is Hamas, and no element within the Israeli side. Among others, Hamas's demands are to end the war and complete IDF withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. The cabinet and the Israeli security officials are united in objecting to these absurd demands. The protests for a hostage deal in Israel have been increasing in the last several weeks. Protests today, prior to the attack by Iran, were attended by thousands of people, and speakers stated, among others, Netanyahu is responsible for torpedoing the deal. It is due to him that Israeli women are being raped, men are being tortured, and hostages are being killed in the Gaza Strip. With that, right now, the hostage negotiations appear to have broken down. There is no scheduled next phase or next round of negotiations. If Hamas is indeed adhering to its initial demands, Israel has outright rejected them. Prior to Iran's attack, it was constantly being said that the negotiators, the United States, Qatar, and Egypt, are going to continue to work to try to find a way to bring the sides together. However, right now, with the region in full escalation with regards to the attack, very likely the hostage negotiations are going to be sidelined, at least for the coming days, and right now it appears that the sides are nowhere near coming to a deal. Regarding the Gaza Strip, there were no rockets or mortars that were fired from the Gaza Strip towards Israel in the last 24 hours. There were several different incidents that were reported regarding the fighting in the Gaza Strip. Among others, airstrikes were reported in the areas of Beit Hanun in the northern parts of the Strip, after an IDF drone reportedly identified several Hamas operatives in the area. In addition, IDF helicopters are reported to have targeted launching sites in the central parts of the Strip, in which 20 long-range rockets primed for launching towards the central parts of Israel were located. Reportedly, this launching field was destroyed. In addition, the IDF is continuing its operation in the central parts of the Gaza Strip at al-Nuseirat refugee camp. Reportedly, the operation has been intensifying throughout the day, and a lot of ground battles have been reported alongside airstrikes. Regarding casualties, no IDF soldier is reportedly killed or injured in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours. This leaves the total number of IDF soldiers killed in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began on 260, and the total number of IDF soldiers injured in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began on 1,561. The Palestinian Health Ministry in the Gaza Strip reported that 52 Palestinians were killed in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours. This brings the total number of Palestinians killed in the Gaza Strip since the war began to 33,686. 76,309 Palestinians are reported injured in the Gaza Strip since the war began. Moving on to the humanitarian situation, only two brief reports. There were continuous missions of aid paradropping into the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. These included 2 planes from the United Arab Emirates and 2 Egyptian planes. I will say, however, that all of these planes take off from Jordan, so given the closure of Jordanian airspace, it is unclear if those aid paradropping missions are going to continue in the next 24 hours. Remains to be seen. In addition to this, the IDF opened up a northern crossing into the Gaza Strip yesterday. According to reports, trucks continue to flow into the Gaza Strip directly through Israel into the northern parts of the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours. Moving on to the West Bank, yesterday I reported that a 14-year-old Israeli, Binyamin Achimeir, from the unauthorized settlement Malachei Shalom in the West Bank was missing and that a wide manhunt was trying to find him. Today his body was found in a field near the settlement. Reportedly he had been killed in an attack that appears to possibly have been an ambush. Next to the body they found a knife and blunt objects. The IDF suspects that Palestinian or Palestinians from the nearby villages may have carried out the attack in a suspected terror attack in the area. The IDF is carrying out a wide-range manhunt for the attacker or attackers in different villages, and different sieges have been imposed. After the discovering of his body, a series of attacks were carried out by Israeli settlers, raiding Palestinian villages in the areas of Duma and El Muer. Palestinians responded to these raids with stone throwing and Molotov cocktails. According to report, one Palestinian, Yaqub el-Nissan, has been killed by settler fire in El Muer, and shots were also reported in the areas of Duma. 6 Palestinians are reported to have been injured. In addition to this, a 14-year-old Palestinian was also injured in the Beitin village in the area, and substantial areas reportedly torched in these different areas of Duma, Beitin, and El Muer, including Palestinian homes, fields, and cars. In addition to this, reports also came in that different settlers established roadblocks around 4 Palestinian towns in the area, including Silwad, Turmus Aya, Sinjil, and Dir Dabwan, near Ramallah. This was done, according to Palestinian sources, amidst the protection of the IDF. Again, I say that was only stated by sources on the ground that wasn't reported in any official media channel. Palestinian cars were attacked and pummeled with stones at the roadblocks that settlers had set up around the towns. In addition to this, a Jewish Israeli photographer in his 70s, who works for Yediot Ahronot, was also violently attacked and beaten by a group of 20 to 30 settlers during the raids. He was taking pictures of the raids. He was apparently called a traitor. His camera equipment was taken and smashed, and he was severely beaten. Hours after this, there was a reported Palestinian shooting attack that occurred later in the evening near the Sinjar area. One IDF border police officer was reportedly lightly injured in the shooting. It was not reported if the attacker was arrested or managed to escape. Moving on to the northern parts of Israel, southern parts of Lebanon. Prior to Iran's attack, and also after Iran's attack, there were continuous barrages of rockets and drones that were fired by Hezbollah, targeting the northern parts of Israel. Rockets were fired toward the areas of El-Kush and Khorafish. There were also rockets towards Matat, Netuah, and Fesuta in one barrage. In addition, there were other barrages that targeted the areas of Kibbutz Sasa. There were also 2 suicide drones that managed to penetrate Israeli airspace and crash near the areas of Hanita, badly injuring an IDF reserve soldier. Later barrages also targeted the areas of Katzrin, Kibbutz Gonen, and Menorah. Hezbollah drone also reportedly crashed near Kfar Blum, and Hezbollah claimed responsibility for 8 different border incidents that occurred in the last 24 hours. Regarding IDF activity, IDF warplanes reportedly attacked Hezbollah military structures in the areas of Ita Sha'ab, Tir Herfa, and Yarin. I will say it is possible that more airstrikes and IDF activity was carried out throughout the last 24 hours. A lot of the news from the region was overshadowed by the time I was looking at the IDF responses by the activity that is going on between Iran and Israel. So it is possible that more airstrikes were carried out. However, those were the only ones that I saw reported. Summarizing the situation with Iran right now, Iran has carried out that attack and has said that the situation as far as it is concerned is complete. Theoretically speaking, if Israel does not retaliate, the situation could go back to the quote-unquote normal situation that has been in the last 6 months of this ongoing escalations between Israel and Hezbollah, between the Houthis launching attacks against Israel, but not escalating further in the region. However, Israel has pledged that it is going to retaliate against Iran directly. If that retaliation does happen, it is possible this will spiral the region into something wider. The United States is reportedly trying to pressure Israel to say if it does carry out a retaliation, it has to be measured in a way that does not lead to further escalations. We will obviously learn more about that in the coming days. I will say again, if you want to know more information about Iran's attack and the possible scenarios as a result of the attack, check out the link below. I had a long interview today in which I discussed the various scenarios. If you find these reports important, do also remember to hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications if you want to know when reports come out. If you have questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. That is my report for the last 24 hours. I'll be back tomorrow.